He thinks she All right, it's 4:15. We'll call the Financial Management Committee meeting to order, and we'll ask Commissioner Tony Smith to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank Thee for another wonderful day. Lord, bless this group of people as we're here tonight to conduct the business for our county so it's equal, fair for every individual in our county. Lord, bless the people that are sick and need your helping hand. Help the ones that need your guidance. Please help them and guide them in the right direction. Lord, we want to thank our troops for their right, what they're giving us, fighting for our rights, our freedom, our current way of life. In thy name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. Under a roll call, everyone's present except for member Scott Johnson and member Dr. Garrett. And so we do have a quorum. First item is approval of the minutes from the July 23 Financial Management Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any questions or clarifications? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, public comments next. I tried to make my way around. Is there anybody wanting to make a comment regarding the agenda today? All right, I hear none, I see none. We'll move on. Comptroller's office is here. I'll have Robert introduce these folks. We had announced at the last commission meeting that for anybody on the commission or what have you that was having questions or concerns about some clarification of the language or what's in or what's out, what's the purpose or what it can do, they're here to try to answer that for us tonight. And so if you'll introduce them, Robert, and I believe if you guys may need to make your way to the
I'll start with, to my right is Jeff Bailey, then Brian Birkeland, and then Katie Armstrong.
We appreciate you guys taking time to come be with us for a few minutes.
All right, I'll open things up just in general terms with the 81 Act, which you all operate under, is it's getting a little long in the tooth now, but it's still one of the best things that county governments can operate under. Most of our counties under the 81 Act are very successful, and that there are other options out there. But the 81 Act is still pretty streamlined and it works very efficiently in most of our counties. And we still recommend 81 Act or a private act that kind of modernizes the 81 Act.
Yeah. So if I can tee you up a little bit, maybe the best way to start off is maybe you could share with us some of the benefits to the 81 Act, or if you recall, I know y'all been around a long time. I mean, you may know of some of the specific challenges Bedford was dealing with when they adopted the 81, but either way, I know there's specific values in having chose 81 over 57 or one of the other ones. So if you
right,
if
well, I think the big advantage of the 81 over the 57 is that the schools are included as well. So there's a lot of efficiencies, especially in accounting and purchasing, when you have all your departments under one department for purchasing and accounting. It's very consistent. It's consistent financial statements for the commission and the committees to utilize. When you have fewer departments, it also allows you to get maybe more competent people in that one department, people that do the same thing. So the purchasing for a school department is consistent with the purchasing for the highway and the purchasing for the mayor's office. And so it just, instead of maintaining, it's just common sense that three separate departments is not going to be as efficient as that one. And so I think that's the big advantage of 81 over the 57. And there are also some minimum requirements for the people operating, like your director has to have some educational requirements and experience requirements in order to be there. There's really not anything in the general law that requires that. So
if we didn't adopt 81, we would be under general law, which means what the mayor's office would be not that I'm not the end all anyway, but it would really lay 100% at that office's feet to be responsible for meeting all of the GASB stuff that's come along and all of the accounting rules.
You basically have a bookkeeper to do that rather than a brain financial.
So we struggle to meet all of the latest expectations of documentation and lines and those things. even having the 81 Act. So I assume that you would say that it would be even more difficult if we were just trying to operate under general law to meet all the expectations and standards associated with accounting principles.
Absolutely, it would. And not just that, you're going to have every department has to maintain that for their operations as well. So you got highway department, whereas on the 81 Act, you've got the finance office and the financial management committee that can deal with financial issues and purchasing issues. Highways can focus on maintaining the roads and doing the work of the highway department, and not have to worry about the bookkeeping side of things. And same with the schools. I've had it's always contentious, even to this day, when we go out and talk to counties that are considering centralizing their operations. And a lot of times the schools are reluctant because they feel like they're giving up some control of operating the schools, when really we had one county where we went to a joint meeting of commission and school board, and there was some heated discussion. Well, at the end of that, they adopted the 81 Act, and a year later, the director of schools and the chairman of the board of education says, "I don't know why we didn't do this years ago, because it freed us up to operate the schools, and we don't have to bother with the paperwork and the bookkeeping and things like that." But it really doesn't take any control. Like the board of education still has statutory authority to operate the schools. Right? They're just not having to process all the transactions on a daily basis. So there are big advantages to it. Jeff can probably share some other advantages looking back at the history of before and after you all adopted the 81 Act. I think, of course, we audit every year, and the number of findings we keep track of, and I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, Brian asked me to look back at the findings we'd taken.
It should pull off if you want to.
Okay. Brian asked me to look back at the findings before and after Bedford County implemented the 1981 Acts. And in 1996 through 2006, 11 years, there was 128 findings. That averaged out to 11.6 findings per year. 2007 to 2023, 17 years, we had 64 findings with an average of 3.76 findings per year. And out of those 17 years, there's been 3 years with 0 findings, 3 years with 1 finding each. And the findings went down, seemed to go down after the first few years after implementing the 81 Act. So that's one thing. One of the other big advantages that I personally tell people when they ask me about centralizing is that when you set up a finance department, you hire your finance director, it's qualified. As county mayors, school directors, highway superintendents come and go, the finance office is still there processing payroll, paying bills, letting bids. And so there's continuity through all the ups and downs of a political environment. And I know that since you've adopted the 81 Acts, you've maybe had about 4 or 5 different school directors. You've been through maybe on your second county mayor, maybe on second highway superintendent, but that's, in 17 years, we see a lot of turnover in those various offices. So that's one of the biggest advantages, as well as having a finance director that the financial management committee can hire and let go if they need to. That person can They can rely on what that person tells them. If they can't rely on it, then they can find somebody else for that position. But with the mayor and the highway and school department all having their own bookkeepers, as a county commissioner, you may be able to trust what they tell you, you may not. It's what we see as a practical matter.
So before the 81 Act, I happened to be a department head for EMS. And so we had a board because prior to that, we wrote our own specs and we went out to bid and put it in the paper. And that board met and looked through those things. And of course, we were subject to audit and what have you. But again, by streamlining and going to the 81 Act that took out of the equation, it made those really advisory boards, if at best, once we adopted 81. Would you agree with that? Have I got that
Yeah, and
structurally correct?
I think the beauty of that is the EMS can still say, here's what we want,
Absolutely.
but they don't have to go through the technical specs and all that, the purchasing agent.
Right. So the boards that were in place became advisory boards unless they were elected like school board. I mean, it didn't
Right.
diminish the school board
Right.
itself, but it did shift also really technically they fall under the same guidelines as the mayor's office and the highway as far as the structural of how that works though, under the
Exactly,
81.
as far as purchasing and
Right.
accounting, yes.
Right. And so it doesn't take away from the mayor's execution of the executive branch. This is the financial component that the mayor's office would have been responsible for had they not. Same would be true for highways. It doesn't diminish or take away any of his authority as a highway
Correct.
superintendent. It is actually a tool, an aid to us to help ensure that we have the best practices and national standard, and most important, that we're meeting the audit criteria from the state.
That's correct.
Commissioner Young.
I came on the commission in 2006, the year that we were talking about switching over. And of course, as a new commissioner, I knew better. I just sat there and listened to stuff. But I could not believe all of the purchasing stuff going on within all of the departments, and the inability for them to coordinate and bulk buying of some things and so. But the selling point to me was that the education department would be under the same umbrella as was the highway department, and therefore kind of everybody would know everything, or at least the finance director would have a value on that. I have two questions. And I don't want you to elaborate. I want you to just say yes or no.
She's a school
Okay.
teacher, and that's what she did when I was at school too. She didn't want me to.
I don't want you to
elaborate.
talk. Our county is under the 81 Act. For our county, our size, with our system like we have it now, is the 81 Act the best fit for us?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I
Uh,
want.
It's a struggle.
If I could elaborate a little bit.
Okay.
As things get modernized, things change, right? And so if you want to go to a private act, now these private acts, we've got a template resolution for private act, and what it allows you to do is to maybe tweak some provisions from the 81 Act.
Right.
So if you ever wanted to do that, we can provide you a template to do that. But from my knowledge of the operations of Bedford County, what Jeff told me, I don't see the need for that.
Second question I have, of course, we have to have on this committee, the highway superintendent and mayor, and Robert sits in ex officio, and the superintendent of schools, but the other four of us are county commissioners. And I questioned that one time as we were going through the process of changing, and the pros and cons of that, rather than having just, my neighbor be on here or somebody from banking be on here. And it pretty much at that time, everyone was in agreement that by allowing the county commissioners to sit on this, they would have just an intense feel for what was going on, and an immediate voice to be able to say or request something that was, had come to them either through their district or just as a request from somebody else. So my question, you don't have to answer this yes or no, you can expound on it. There is nothing wrong with our doing that, having the 4 commissioners sit on here.
No.
Okay,
And, you know, the act says 4 appointed by commission. They do not have to be commissioned. And we've seen it in different counties, different ways. But for the most part, it is 4 commissioners.
okay.
And we've got some that have 3 commissioners and a school board member appointed. But the commission's still the one doing the appointment. Got one county I'm aware of that's got a local CPA on that. But for the most part, it's 4 commissioners.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Scott Johnson, and is coming in now into the meeting, so thank you for getting here. We want to make sure we had enough of you. We want you guys to all have the opportunity to ask questions. They are from the comptroller's office. We just went through sort of the benefits of the 81 Act in general and why a county might want to choose to have it. And then and so they've been talking about that. You just come in on the tail end of Linda asking a couple of specific questions. I don't know if you had in your mind some that you wanted, but obviously we're open for all of us and the commissioners that are here to ask specific questions as well. So I'm just trying to get you orientated.
Thank you.
I've got a question, and I'm just going to dummy it down, I guess. I think it could be a very simple answer for everyone to understand. Under the 81 Act, the Finance Committee, with any item that comes through the county, regardless of where it's through, short of the school board, if an item that the commissioners are going to have to vote on for approval, if that item is, I guess, earmarked with a dollar figure, where money is going to be spent or lost, under the 81 Act, does that item first and foremost come before this Finance Committee first? Then the Finance Committee can send it to county committees or whatever if it moves forward at that point.
Well, let me differentiate a couple things there. One is if it's spending money, well, if it's spending money that's already been appropriated, because really the commission has control of the budget.
Mhm.
So if an item's coming before the committee or anywhere else, it's already been appropriated, it doesn't have to go back.
Right.
It wouldn't necessarily have to go back to this committee either, depending on your policies. We've got some counties that have a policy of everything before disbursement come before this committee. But now if it's new money that needs to be appropriated by commission, then it depends on your policies if it goes through the financial. But definitely if there's no appropriation in existence, then commission's gonna have to appropriate. So it's, that's like new money, a new need
Right.
that comes up during the year that you didn't anticipate during the budget.
We do that as a budget amendment to this committee, and then it goes to the commission.
So this committee serves as the budget committee, basically.
So then he's saying, so the county policy, Robert, I guess I'm asking you, if an item comes and it's not a budgeted item, it's a new item like we've had for the last couple of years where there's been a whole lot of stuff going on, everybody's getting upset and frustrated about, why did it come to finance, didn't go through certain committees or whatever. The way if it's new money, per the 81 Act and our policy, would you please say how that is supposed to be
If
handled?
it is new money, then we develop a budget amendment, we bring it to this committee, they approve it, forward it on to the commission for approval.
Okay.
That's basically how it works. Now, in the law itself, I think it says the finance director can move between line items of that
At the
department.
lowest level, yeah.
Right.
The line
Yeah.
item.
Yeah, I read that at the lowest level. What constitutes the lowest level?
Well, like, for instance,
Non-payroll or?
well, there's a separate provision in most people's appropriation resolution that says all increases to salary have to go before. But for instance, at the let's say you want to move money within the mayor's budget, So anything within that budget, in a line item under that budget, let's say you want to move, you've got materials and then you've got supplies or you got other expenses. You could move within those lines without approval.
Without the approval, this committee or the commission? Or both?
Well, I think both. I think finance director's authority.
Right, could just,
And even though we have that law, we still go ahead and put it in the budget.
so that's a best practice.
Well, I just feel better sending it to the committee.
Not incorrect to do that. It's
No,
just a
it is
step that's
not.
not necessary.
It's probably a good control, actually.
Hey, you might want to get a mic. Can somebody get it? I just want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Yeah,
Is she-
but it's not coming through though. Hang on. He's bringing.
Stand by, John. Well, let's say we have a department. I won't name any department. But just say we got Department X out here in the county and their director, and maybe say this department, we have different committees for the commission, like we have a building committee or a property committee. We've got a law enforcement committee and so forth. Let's say that one of these departments, generally reports, not actually report to them or, leadership, but they report to them to provide information. Let's just say it's law enforcement. And law enforcement, let's say the sheriff's office or someone under that committee says, we need Project X. The Project X has not been talked about money-wise. It's just a concept. Would it be logical that they would just bring that to the law enforcement committee? Hey, we need to do such and such, and maybe get some parameters of what this is, And then once they get like a concept or an idea going, then it's going to say, okay, it's going to cost some money here. Then it would go to finance for, coming up with some dollars. Maybe Robert would get some estimates, some bids or estimates or whatever, and then go. But what I'm trying to say is, as opposed to sheriff's office going directly to finance and not saying anything to law enforcement on just the general concept.
I can't really answer that question without knowing completely your committee structure.
Right.
The only committees required are budget, which is your finance committee,
Mm-hmm.
and investment committee under the 81. So how your committee structure is drawn up, and there should be a description of whether they want everything to go before
Mhm.
that committee.
And,
You got highway committee. Is it clear what needs to go before the highway committee before it moves on to finance?
yeah, and the Rules and Legislative Committee is currently looking at what they refer to as the bylaws or the commissioner's guidelines. And so what they're referring to, the current way that it's set up, which I think makes sense, is that they have these standing committees, as they refer to them, and we have department heads give them updates of what's going on. Now, in this specific issue, I think he's referring to, would this be referring to the gun range, or would this be
Well, we
referring
could use
to
that as an example.
or the tablets? I wasn't sure which one you were going with there.
Yeah, either one
So-
would be fine.
Okay. Yeah, both of those, the sheriff, particularly in this case, referring to the sheriff, has authorities vested in him because he's a full-time elected official about operations. So, as you say, I think that's wise. We're having mayor's conference this week, and I've been talking with the legal people this morning and CTAS people, and talking through all these because I was anticipating some of these questions. But there's a lot of variables, but I believe they also say the same thing in that the state law doesn't require those committees. Now, the 81 Act puts us in a situation where you got to have this budget committee.
Right, correct.
But at the end of the day, it seemed like what they were clearly saying was that a committee can't tie the hands of the commission. The commission, at the end of the day, is the body to decide. And so that's a little bit different. It's not really part of the 81 Act, which is why I asked Charlie Curtis to come to the Rules Committee to talk to you guys more about operations, and ask you guys to come to finance where we could be more specific about the structure. But I think that's a little bit of what, unless you
Yeah.
want to, unless I'm
Well,
misreading
I just think particularly if you're on law enforcement or a particular oversight committee, that it would be good to have knowledge about the project before it actually comes up to vote.
And I think that goes back to, the commission can structure those committees and create those committees. And so I think it's good, not just to create the committee, but be very explicit in what you intend to go before that committee and how it flows. If it's a law enforcement project, that it goes to law enforcement and then to the finance.
But someone sitting on a law enforcement committee, I think it would be important for them to at least be aware, hey, that we're considering such and such, as opposed to, all of a sudden you find out about it as a completed project or project being ready to be financed.
But they said they did. Yeah. Agree.
That's all.
Okay, I didn't want to cut you off. While we're while we're clarifying on the rules committee and all those things, I think that is where that is best served for you guys to figure out how you want to lay out those committees.
Yeah. And I'm
for
just
sure.
one thought of 18 thoughts.
There you go. Oh yeah, no, I get it, and I mean it stands to some form of reason. Now, again, like as in relation to the shooting range, I assume is part of the subliminal in the room, but that did come here as a budget request, and it was discussed that we didn't have a financial mechanism at the time for it, and that we would have to hold till what time we could potentially do that, and it certainly would have been good for it to made its way there in the end, but those funds didn't become available to the last minute. And so it was in with the other. It was not disclosed, but you certainly could have deferred it away with your 10 votes. You could have separated any of those and voted on them.
Okay. Well, my only comment to that would be, as new commissioners, and I think there were about 7 of us, we didn't know what had been done in the past. So it really isn't fair that these things bypass these committees that we don't know about, and then we're asked to vote on them financially, and we knew nothing about them. And I have great concerns when that happens, and we've had a couple of those lately. And I just don't think that's the best financial practice to do. I think we all 18 should know, regardless of what has happened in the past.
Yeah, and again, as commissioner, I'm not debating that issue with you, but you get the agenda in advance, and you have the opportunity to contact the office, and we're recording all of our meetings. So again, without getting into debate with you in regards to that, I don't think that really lays at the 81 Act. That lays at the committee structure that the commission will endorse for themselves. You'll create your own rule for that. The mayor doesn't create that rule that you guys are looking at internally.
I have another question.
Yes.
We have our highway superintendent down there on the end down there. And he, I guess, sort of in theory, kind of reports to this committee, tells us things that are going on and so forth. And Mark, I think I've asked you this before, anything, since he sits on this committee, anything that's relative to him to get approved, and you can help me with some examples, it can go straight to this committee. This is his committee. I'm talking about road approval. We've had that discussion.
Grants, those things that have been come up in discussion.
The grant, from what I understand, now make sure we are doing it right, all of us. Grants or anything like that, there comes to finance. If we get a grant from the highway department, I always bring it through here. By state law, the road list goes directly from the road superintendent to the commission. There is no in between the on the road list by state law.
Yeah.
The road list, once it goes straight from your highway superintendent to the commission. It doesn't go to any standing committees or anything like it right there. Now, in the past, and I've done this since I've been here, I've always just appeased Rules and Legislative because the chairman always wants it to come before that committee. But I also told him, I said, when I bring it to you, by state law, you can't vote on this to send it to the commission because it directly goes
To
from
just put it on the agenda.
just put it on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, that's
So
what I wanted.
That's sort of what I rolls on that part. And any financial issues, I deal with Robert in his office on all financial issues and things that need to come to this committee, and other things if it's within a budget structure, it's already been passed in budget, those things don't come. Is that correct?
Yes, as far as we're concerned, it is.
Yeah.
We're auditors and we're following
Yeah.
the money, right?
Yeah.
And this is a statutory committee, finance.
Mhm.
As long as you approve everything that you're supposed to approve through this committee. As I said before, and I think the mayor made the same point, these other operational or departmental committees, that's really up to the rule of commission, how they flow through and what you reported where. When we come in and audit, we're looking at the money. We're looking at finance committee and commission action and school board.
And one more, I
Yeah,
promise,
sure.
this is
Oh,
my
yeah,
last
no.
question.
Well, that's why we brought them today.
Robert wears the hat of our financial officer and the Board of Education crew and the purchasing agent, right? Am I saying that right? In other counties our size, sometimes they have 3 people who do those 3 jobs and not just one person who does them all. And so I've always felt like, even though we pay Robert well, that we're still getting a good bargain, one instead of having to do 3.
Absolutely. I can paraphrase what I said earlier and be a little more blunt about it. If you pay 1 or 2 really competent people, that's better than paying 6 or 7 incompetent people. So that's, you know, that's a generality. It's not always that case in a general law county, but the principle is there.
I don't know if this is directly the right question to ask, but of course, the purchasing agent, I think, is under the guideline where it says he signs contracts. But employment contracts, he does not sign. That would be the responsibility of the mayor's office.
I think if you go back to the authority in highway superintendent, mayor, and the Board of Education, that gives you the authority
Right.
for employment.
Right. But so you agree there's a distinction between an employment contract and the standard operating or business contracts that the finance director would be responsible for. Diana, I seen you got another question?
Well, I did. I'll piggyback off of what you said. So I get that the mayor can sign an employment contract. In a situation that we've had here that's caused me some concern, a position was created. The mayor hired somebody for it. We didn't advertise for the position. The position came with a salary that was in our budget, and this person will oversee construction. Unbeknownst to the commission, part of that was a 0.85% pay for a commission over anything over $100,000, which has really run into some money. But we weren't aware of that. Is that good practice? And is it good practice to do a set salary and paying commission to somebody?
There's some people that say it is, some people say it's not. I think the main point is you've got the authority to do that. And if the appropriation is there, that's the commission authority, which it would be in salary. But because you said you had.
Okay, this item is not listed separately. They are borrowing the money with the notes to pay for that. So there is not a line item that I have seen that outlines. And all of our other employees, there's a line item that has their salary, it has their Medicare and Social Security, their TCRS, retirement. All of those things are specified. This particular position, it does not.
You're getting into some details here that's really for the field auditor, not for me, I think. So,
Well, if you'll share that field auditor's name with me, I'll be happy to have that discussion.
but back to the issue, there's a lot of literature out there. It's recommended to have a personal representative, whether that's an official construction manager, or it's highly recommended to have a personal representative of the government be involved in this. And as far as compensation, that's also a practice that goes on, whether it's debatable. Flat towers, more work. So, but there again, that's something for the government.
So that should have been up to the legislative body to have notice of that and have
Well, I didn't say
some
that
thought.
necessarily because you've already appropriated funds. And by the way, when you've got a bond issue, when you approve that bond issue, you really appropriate it. So, so that money's appropriated. For any other details, I'll let you know if it's appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
I said Nashville, look at audit report after audit report. Transaction stuff.
Conflict of interest. Again, was talking with Steve Austin, who is one of the.
I know.
Okay, yeah, he's a. I like that guy. He's a straightforward. We were talking about conflict of interest because some of them had some concerns with that.
Okay.
What I feel like I got from him today, and I think I sort of knew this, but conflict of interest. He rattled off two different TCA codes depending on the nature of what the conflict was. I guess on this side of the house, it's going to be contracts for services. And he said some adjustment had been made that modified a little bit of the conflict of interest verbiage that's in the 81. But at the end of the day, it still stands in that for the purpose of contracts, I'm going to use the word for services. I'm not sure he said it that way, but there is direct and indirect.
Yeah.
His position was, if I understood it right, and hopefully you guys can clear that up, if there is a direct conflict by an individual commissioner, meaning they are part owner of the business or whatever, not only can the commissioner not vote on that contract, nor can the commission because it's an illegal contract. If that commissioner works for the company, that's an indirect conflict, and he needs to disclose that he works for them, but he can then vote, and so can the commission on that. Would you accept that as a 20,000-foot answer?
I would, with the caveat that it is probably recommended by most legal counsels that you take the extra step and do not vote on it, even though you disclose it. But you can.
Right, correct. Yeah, but in regards to whether nobody can vote or somebody can vote, I understood him to say today that if one commissioner has a conflict because he's part owner, it also voids the other commissioners from voting on that contract because it's an illegal contract.
Well, it's an illegal contract. He can't do it. It's illegal for him to do that.
But
enter that contract.
the
now,
indirect that you referred to.
Yeah, but it says, the statute actually says controlling interest, not partners. So if
Okay.
you've got 20 partners, you don't have controlling
Okay,
interest.
yeah, well, he suggested that if they had any interest,
Okay.
but again, you know how the lawyers are. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that, just like I said, lawyers will usually tell you, you can still vote if you acknowledge that you've got an indirect interest, but it's probably best to abstain from voting and let the rest.
And then the other conflict of interest, which I don't guess it rides under the 81 Act, was pay and benefits of an employee that's at budget time. And that may kind of cross over to you guys. It's our understanding that if it's you or your spouse and it's pay or benefits and it's budget, you can't vote. But it also could change the majority if they're conflicted from voting. There's no indirect. You either have a conflict and you can't vote and the majority changes, or you don't have a conflict and you can vote. Do you, again, 20,000 foot?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's just if it's the one thing, not the whole general, not the whole.
If it's, well, his position also was that the budgets do go bundled. Some people don't like that word. And they're trying to figure out if they can try to keep it from ever going to the commission bundle. His position on the budgets and the tax rate is it goes bundled because if you don't send it bundled and somebody has a conflict, you're disenfranchising the commissioner from being able to vote. Now, on the floor, according to Charlie Curtis, and I don't disagree with this, with, in our case, 10 votes, the commission can unbundle something that was sent to them bundled, or they simply we could send it unbundled, and with 10 votes on the floor, they can bundle it.
So I think the actual language in the statute, and when we're talking about bundling, that's a good description, but they're talking about the budget in its entirety. And so if let's say a commissioner whose wife works for the school department, he can say, hey, my wife's salary's in there. So technically, that's an indirect conflict if you're just dealing with the school budget.
Yeah.
But you can still vote when you're talking about the appropriation resolution. It's got general fund, debt service, schools, and everything in it.
But you're also working on, if I think I'm right, if you're voting on the school budget individually from the general fund, individually from debt service, and individually from there, he could not vote. You agree with
Right.
that?
But you're never going to vote on the appropriation resolution individually, right? Because it's one
Yeah, they
document,
have.
one resolution.
We didn't, because they cleared that up and said you would have the same conflict if you were to vote on the general fund penny separate from the school funds from the other, that you would have conflict again, that person wouldn't be able to vote. Now, that's what CTAS gave us in writing lately. Now, it didn't come to that on the floor because the
Yeah.
commission didn't choose to unbundle them. So they stayed bundled, and so there was no conflict on either side. They voted up or down.
I don't think in my 44 years I've seen an appropriation resolution by individual budget, but yeah, I take the point.
Well, again, unbundled it on the floor, possibly. I mean, they have in the past, but they didn't do that this last time. Is that right?
Well, they unbundled the tax rate resolution, not the appropriation resolution.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Spoke.
They would vote on this tax rate separate from this tax rate. Yes, I've seen it happen. But not the appropriation.
A good finance director here, I think it reads pretty straightforward in here, but it says that the committee hires finance director. Committee could let go of the finance director, but subject to commission.
Commission approval.
Commission is-
Right. Okay. How about surplus property? That's been a debate that's moving around on the commission, at the committee levels about whether to surplus something or not surplus it. Got to come to this committee at some point, or does that go straight to the commission? How does that read in regard? Because I read it to say that he'll exercise the surplus, but what's the step? Who's the step that gets it to the commission from the 81 Act, or does the 81 Act not speak to that?
Well, I mean, there's some interpretations of the 81 Act that says that authority says that the director has authority to do that. And other people say, no, just what you said, they're the ones that have to sell it. But the governing body has to serve. Just a best practice, I've always recommended to counties that if the school department or commission, or really if the school department does it, still needs to go through approve surplus of any material equipment. We're not talking about.
What we typically have done is the schools will declare it surplus. It'll come to this committee to get it on the agenda for the commission.
Yes.
And the
And
same thing, if it's anything else, it comes to this committee to get on the agenda.
I think that's exactly the way it is.
And does that include property?
Yes.
Surplus. It doesn't make any distinction about what the
Like a
surplus
plot of
is.
land?
No, acquisition of real property is different, but not disposal. Except that it does allow you to negotiate.
Speaking to Mike.
I'm confused on debt service, extra funds, it goes to debt service under 81 Act.
No, debt service, we have property tax that goes to debt service, and that goes toward county debt. We have sales tax that goes to debt service collections, that goes to school debt, and we have an impact fee that also goes to school debt. And then there's some other smaller taxes, but it's budgeted under debt service to pay debt payments.
Okay,
It
thanks.
shows where the pennies
Okay,
are distributed out in the tax rate you approve.
thank you.
And there's an overriding principle in Tennessee, it goes back to an old court ruling from the 30s, been upheld by the Attorney General, that says that people have a right to know what they're taxed for. You can't tax for one purpose. So if you put money, if you've got property tax in the general fund, you can't move it to the school.
You said you can't, correct?
Cannot,
Right.
if it's property.
Right. Now, next year, though, whenever we're appropriating, if they say we're gonna put 6 pennies here and maybe 4 pennies there, as long as we don't violate maintenance
Right.
effort, you could do that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the proper way to do it, is by changing the tax rate the next year.
Anybody else got, am I missing anybody out in the audience? Thank you guys for coming and doing this with us. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's always a challenge, and it's usually, there's a backstory, but we're grateful to get some good solid information and clear the air on a couple of things. Thank you for
Well,
that.
thank you very much for inviting
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're not gonna make them stay.
No, that's why we put them to the front. They had all they could stand. Next item on the agenda is solid waste.
Visiting Marshall County Recycling Hub was very interesting to see their mainstream trash and how they handled it. They no longer use inmates because of liability issues. They have had a hard time keeping people on staff to work. They go through a temp agency, and it is extremely hot up there and dirty, so they really have an extremely hard time of keeping people employed. Bids for the solid waste for the coming year, 24-25, were awarded. Tires, Liberty Tire. Mowing Centers was Robert Dye, and our metal went to Pierce Processing and Trading, who had it this last year. We have also recently placed plastic bins for number 1 and number 2 plastic at El Bethel, Unionville, and Tollgate. Those centers are open 6 days a week. This has to be clean, no bags, crates, or any other contaminants. Newspaper has also been moved to these 3 locations only. There will be new signage on all the bins. This frees up those bins to make better use for the cardboard at all the centers. The decision for these changes is to utilize our centers in the most efficient manner. Bedford County offers more facilities to take recyclable than most of the adjoining counties. Plus, we're also open longer hours. The Tire Center will be closed this Wednesday, August 28th. The reason being is that the Highway Department is closed for shutdown for vacation, and our employees through the Highway Department man that with the inmates. And then just regular calls from new residents that were taken for trash and how to dispose of that. Mark will tell you a little bit more about ISWA negotiations. And the report for this month is attached. Recycling revenue was $11,494.41. Recycled tonnage was 70.84. Recycling disposal costs went up about $6,000 this month. It was $37,576.08. Tonnage was 1,044.36. That was an increase of 166.08 tons. Does anyone have any questions of me? Then Mark, do you want to?
I'd be
Let me
Commissioner-
interject, Diane, in case my, Normandy Town Hall inside, they've got a container now for, the plastic Amazon bags, mail-in envelopes. Let me rephrase that, the mail-in envelopes. She's also taken some other ones, but I'm afraid to say the list, but it's on the website. And if they get 1,000 pounds, they get a prefabbed bench. And so every 1,000 pounds they get, which is a lot of Amazon bags though, but they do get a bench to go out in their little park area. So lest somebody call and complain about where they could take those things. If they want to take the scenic route to Normandy, they can, but check the website because they have
I
varying
will see
hours.
What that actually includes. I don't know if
Or
that's
call Rhonda.
classified as 1s or 2s, or if, I think that would be a different grade, but.
Well, it's just those Amazon, that's mainly how it started, but I believe she told me they would take some other things, but check the website or call Rhonda, but that, if anybody ever says, what do I do with those things?
Okay. All
Come
right,
on
great.
out
I
to,
appreciate
come on out
that
to the
information.
country.
Okay, but I will find out about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll go, I'm gonna go back to where we just rebid all of our contracts on mowing and our metal that brings in about $200,000 a year on our recycling of metal with all the centers and stuff. There is one caveat that has come up in the new contract, with Ferris Processing, that where our metal goes. I just want to go ahead and put that out there on the table. Refrigerated items such as refrigerators,
Air conditioning.
air conditioners, freezers, anything that has refrigeration to it that we accept in our metal bins, and it goes to Ferris Processing for them to pay us, for bringing it out there. This has been a state law for a long time, probably, I guess, close to 20 years, I guess, probably, don't you think, Diane? It's probably,
The Clean Air Act.
yeah, the Clean Air Act, when it went into play in I think it's about 20-something years ago. But no one has really ever had to go by the rules. No other county and nothing like that. So we wasn't doing anything wrong. Ferris Processing wasn't doing anything wrong. But there has been a push from the EPA to make sure that these items are disposed of in the correct way. All refrigerated items per state law. This is not Ferris Processing law. This is not Bedford County Solid Waste law. This is state law. If someone has a refrigerator that they need to get rid of, it goes bad at your house, you have to have that Freon that's in that refrigerator or air conditioner or freezer or any other items that's refrigerated. That item has to be pulled out. The refrigeration part, the Freon has to be pulled out before it can be disposed of. That most time people just basically do other things to get the refrigeration going. I'm not going to say how that works, but we make sure that refrigeration is not in those items before we accept it, however that person does it. So that is left on the individual. Once it gets to us, if it doesn't have refrigeration, we're clean, we're good by state law, and so is Ferris Processing. But we do have instances where things do come into the centers, but we don't accept it. We tell them they have to carry it back and get the Freon out of it, and once they get the Freon out, it comes back. But any county resident that's going to dispose of a refrigerated item at one of our centers, we have to fill out a manifest. They will have to sign that refrigeration is pulled out of that, and we have to send that with the load that has it on there to Ferris Processing. There could be an instant where it gets through the centers, and because the centers are so busy, it's hard to catch every single detail that comes through there. But if it gets to Ferris Processing and it still has the refrigeration in it, Ferris Processing will not accept that. We've talked to them. We're all just going to play it by ear and see how it goes. If it keeps working the way it's going, everything is fine. But it could turn into a thing in the future if it becomes a problem where the county doesn't get a fine, and because we're the middleman. If we take it from the individual, it's all on us. So if that turns into be a problem, then that could be where we have to change some rules about any refrigeration products in the future. Nothing is changing right now. As long as everyone, the citizens know they have to have that Freon out of those items when they bring them to the center. So, and it's left up to that individual to get that out, however they need to get them out. So when it comes to the center, it doesn't have it in with us, then we can accept it at that point. So I just want to put that on the record. So hopefully somewhere down the line, we don't have any issues with that.
And we're concerned that we certainly
Yeah.
want to encourage the public to properly dispose of
Yes.
items. And so we're,
Who takes that stuff out? Kincaid's or?
Any refrigeration place, I think, is what
yeah,
we
I
understand.
think they call it evacuating it or something, don't
Yeah,
they?
it's kind of evacuating the system, but I think any I guess
HVAC.
heating and cooling places, some some, auto mechanics place can do that because they have to pull it out of vehicles when they work on them. So that's where the individuals just will have to just reach out and see who it is that does.
I wondered also if maybe, and we haven't talked to them, to see if the vocational school,
Yeah,
they have a
they do have a
class on
refrigeration class.
refrigeration, that they might do that as training.
Yeah,
So that might be, like I said, I haven't talked to them,
yeah,
so that might be an option that we could also utilize.
yeah. We're gonna reach out to them next week when we get back in the office and see if they would be willing to charge someone, X amount of dollars to pull that out for them, or let them pull it out for part of their schooling or something like that, and see what comes back at that point. Yeah.
But we feel like if we can, we need to continue to
Yes.
receive that. It's got to be without the refrigerant in it, because we have concerns about how people will start to then try to dispose if we don't.
Right.
So part of me was, first thing was, well, just don't take it anymore. But
Yeah.
it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah. If we just cut something like that off, I mean, we already have a problem now with litter and trash and everything. People, they just don't want to go to the center like 15 minutes from their house. They'll dump it on the side road somewhere. So we don't want that to start.
Yeah. And so we don't want to burden our system, but we need to be flexible
Yes.
if we can, because it'll show up somewhere else if we don't take it at the center.
So, if y'all remember last month, I brought you up to speed on ISWA with the new, tipping fees that we're trying to get a 1 year stalemate before we put it out for the total bid. ISWA, we approved this in our meeting last month. Our new fee for Bedford County, of course, I'm not gonna say that Bedford County and the city of Shelbyville pay the same fee. We're all part of a member of ISWA. But our fee right now is $35.97 is what we pay now. Our new fee is going to $48 plus $1.25 state fee that's on top of the 48 plus the 95 cents per ton for ISWA. So our new fee is going to be $50.20 per ton for every ton that goes to the landfill. We are fine this budget year. We can make it through April. That starts April 1st. We have budgeted in projection of this for this budget year, but next year's budget, once we get into budget talks next year, we're going to have to find a minimum of $200,000 to handle our tonnage that we carry to the landfill. That price of 50/20 is only for 1 year. We have a 1 year stalemate of this price. I remember what year it is. We'll be in 25, so it'd be 26. 2026, ISWA will go into a full-blown bid out for all the trash that comes through ISWA, which includes Bedford's trash. Our fee for this 1 year stalemate is going up $14.23 a ton. I hope I'm wrong. I very much hope I'm wrong. But I think when this is bid out in ISWA, it's probably going to jump at least that much when the original bid comes into play. And that bid will be for a minimum of 5 years of a contract with a 3% increase every year on top of that fee. So for next year, we're good through this budget year, but next year's budget, if everybody wants to stay in the trash business and keep the centers going, I mean, it's pretty much, it's a thing where I don't think we really have much of a choice. We have streamlined these centers, and we have saved a lot of money of how the centers are run. But at this point, there's no way to save on this part. This is per ton of every trash that comes in, and our tonnage rates are climbing just about every year I've been here. They've been climbing at least 500 to 700 tons a year. And we're projecting, me and Danny's worked on this. I mean, I about drove her crazy throwing numbers out and pulling numbers in just about every day. We've worked on this every single day for the last month, I think a month and a half. But with all the development that's going on inside the city limits, and in the county, our tonnage rate, I think when we get to that 26, our tonnage rates are going to be close to 1,000 tons more than what we're going to have at the end of this year. We're going to be close to 12,500 tons, I think, by the time the end of the year goes. I think when that rate hits for the ISWA contract to hit in, we're going to be in that 13,000 plus, which means the 200,000 I'm going to be requesting for next year's budget to go in there to handle our trash influx that we've got. That number is probably going to double and almost triple, I'm afraid, over the next 2 years. On top of the 200,000 that we got to ask for to keep our centers moving and dispose of our trash. This is something I think that we all need to be thinking about, because I'll when we get to budget time, I'll bring in more information to you. Right now is not the time for all that. But Diane and myself, we've been projecting out for at least the next 5 years, and to stay doing what we do, it is going to be one of the most highly funded departments that you're probably going to have on the county side.
And on that note, of course, population coming in, the census was easily suggesting 500 to 1,000 people. We're probably in the 700 range. I mean, when you look at kids presenting to the school and add 2 more to it, you're going to get to about 1,000 people in a quick hurry.
Yes.
On top of that, after COVID hit, where people used to eat out in restaurants, they don't seem, I mean, people eat out some more now, but there's still a lot of people who get stuff to go. It's amazing when you go in, the DoorDash and all that stuff. So where those businesses were disposing of those products because you ate there and left the waste behind there, these people coming and getting them, they're taking them to their house and then they're having to dispose of it. So it made a shift there as well in the amount of tonnage that we see. Not just the county, the city would have experienced that too, residential trash. But then now the piling in of folks on top of it.
Yeah.
And then we're running out on the contract, and everybody, landfill tipping fees are premium. Rutherford has battled that, knew they were staring right at it, literally.
Yeah.
And are struggling with it as well. So it is a monster that we've been working hard to try to predict and put aside and plan how we would structure. But keep in mind, let's just say if it was 200,000, if the penny's worth 100,000, you need 2 pennies of revenue just to compensate for that one issue. So,
and if when ISWA bids that contract out, and I know some people may fuss about why we on ISWA. Well, our rates are cheaper than anybody else around us. We pay the lowest tipping rates of any county or city anywhere around us. Even when this rate goes up to the $50.20, everybody else is paying in excess of $65 to $80. There has been some speculation of looking at what is best for the county going forward, but the rates that I think that if we stepped out of ISWA, our rates would automatically go to $85 a ton, and we don't need that. We can't. That's going to be something that's really going to hurt to try to find this extra money to keep putting it in there. But with all the development we've got, and we're one of the, I think, Ted, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're in the top 5, I think, of the most fastest growing counties, I think, around us.
we're in the top tier for sure.
Yeah. So that sort of tells you the more people that come here, which we want all the people to come here, but anytime you do that, that's the nature of the business of what you have to do when you provide that kind of service to the public of trash pickup.
But you'll have more data to come from ISWA and
Yes.
closer to budget time.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Any other? Makes my stomach hurt.
Can I bring up my Wawa story?
Yeah, please do.
When they consolidated the newspaper to the other centers, it left Normandy and Bell Buckle and War Trace without a newspaper collection. And so people warned me out about this. But I told them, let me see. And so, Mark, what I'm asking is I can't speak for Bell Buckle and War Trace as much as I can the Normandy Center, but the Normandy Center is unique in that Normandy and the Ross area their directions take them to Tullahoma, like it or not. Most of the residents in Normandy and a lot in Ross never darken the door of Shovel unless they work here. So their answer to me was, "Well, I'll just have to put it in the trash." And these are people that believe in recycling and want to do what's right and are frugal on everything. So, and the mayor to this too, I'd just like, if it's a matter of the cost of the bins, or the manpower or all the other things, but as we approach the next budget time, I'd at least like that to be brought up as a topic. So I've asked Mark, Mayor, to get some values where we could possibly get that reinstated.
And
It's-
I've talked to him as well.
Yeah.
Because you talked to me in advance.
It's just,
Part of the repurposing.
we want people to recycle, and then you suddenly take it away from them, and they're going, you know.
Yeah, those bins were
They're going,
wound up
"What?"
being repurposed for
Yes.
cardboard, which is
Yes, I
more of a massive situation. And so, but we will absolutely.
Well, I won't
look
say
for-
anything more till budget.
But prepare thyself.
But prepare.
I got you. All right. Any other questions for solid waste? All right. Next up is HR, and I know they're passing around the mic, so thank
We
you guys for
are.
doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. So you have your July data from the Human Resource Office in your packet, and you will see that there were 7 new hire individuals in with our organization. Those were directly to animal control, EMS, health department, juvenile detention, maintenance, the jail, and E911. That's what those 7 positions were. We had 3 total full-time that left our organization, and they were affiliated with EMS, jail, and the E911 organization. We do still have posted on our website and our social media platforms where we take all the time our EMS applications, our correction officer applications, as well as our juvenile detention. And our building and codes inspector, that was the additional position that was approved by the full commission at the time of budget approval. And working with Amy, those interviews, we've taken a good number of applications, which was a good thing, and resumes, and she has conducted interviews. So I would anticipate that rolling off very shortly, coming back with hopefully a position filled in the near future. Others that we have recently filled, corrections, we have a solid waste attendant position that we filled full-time, animal control kennel tech, custodian, and an E911 dispatcher from the one that left. This is the organization that was reported on the first page. Again, my active and ongoing are always the same. New on board, the updating things when I need to, FMLA, no day is the same. That is for sure. One of the things that I've been placing emphasis on is how I can continue to improve the onboard process for new hires, particularly with full-time, understanding what all benefits they have afforded to them, whether it be life insurance, medical, dental, vision, retirement. So one of the big things, and of course we've made a great goal to have our retirement rep, Ted Choate, come and speak with our employees and meet with them every quarter, just to get people involved more so in a 401k option, 457, 401k Roth. It's really, really important on the retirement education side, at least for me, with new hires, that they understand how to create their user and password information on the TCRS website, because that will be how they communicate with the state of Tennessee retirement system for many, many years to come. That will be the device and the mechanism that is expected for those individuals to activate their retirement process. So we spend quite a bit of time talking about benefits. So an average on board, when you see these, those are at minimum an hour that I spend with employees trying to make sure that they understand and that they have all of the questions, because the goal is when they start day one, they're on operations at that point and they've got all of these other things and they know how they're going to get paid and they know where they're going to be able to find their information and where their W-2s are going to be at electronically, what they can expect on their TCRS. So those are the things that I feel like a broken record when I have to come in here because there's so many things specific to HR that you can share, and then other things, not so much. But in the professional development side of it, I was able to attend a CTAS for the benefits of a performing management system that was 1 hour. And then I'll also serve on the State of Tennessee Local Government Insurance Board, aside with the local education and the State of Tennessee board members that Commissioner Bryson chairs. And I attended that meeting last Thursday. So that's the board that Robert and his staff work very closely with when we get our open enrollment and when we get the state of Tennessee's information on our insurance benefits for our employees. So I consider that a really big win for Bedford to have a rep and someone that can advocate for local government costs on insurance for employees and dependents and what they're looking to do in the future on their side when they bid out medical providers and where the cost shares are being seen. And surprisingly, it's not really with hospitalizations right now. The increase and the cost for the increase on some of the annual enrollment things that employees are starting to see, it's because there's more data coming in that it's prescription related than hospitalization. So we get some really good information from that meeting. That's all I have.
Questions? All right, thank you for that report. Up next is our archives.
In this last month, or the first month of July in the fiscal year, we have been a little slow in our visitors and reference questions, but the reference questions we've had have been pretty extensive. We've had numerous folks, again, coming in and wanting to know more about their historic houses that they're buying. They're so excited about moving to Bedford County and buying a historic house and upgrading it. And we have two that we're expecting and hoping to be able to help them get it to what's called the National Register of Historic Places. And so that's the kind of request we've had. We've had some people from all over this year, in addition to local citizens this month. And they have been from Georgia and Texas. And I thought I might just say a bit about tourism. They're coming to Bedford County to do family history and they stay and they go around and they look at all of the county. And I think that's very interesting that they come and they spend their tax money and eat and enjoy Bedford County in a lot of different ways than just the average tourist going through, as Miss Sylvia would say, going through Lynchburg. And so I think that's been really interesting. We've had them from Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, and South Carolina just in the last month. So on a permanent records that we help with and we're preserving, we've done a great deal of work in improving the organization of the county clerk's materials related to the county commission and related to the clerical of circuit. And those are they're still in the attic. And we're improving those every day and working with them for you all. And so then, as I said, then the temporary records, we're continuing those that have been pre-approved for proper disposal. Those go through Shred-it, which thankfully don't have to go to the tonnage that goes through our stuff. So those are the kind of things that we've been doing this month and working with the citizens, the public, and our guests. Any questions?
Sure.
We do. We have 2 or 3. I call them first growth in that they never got cut ever. And we have some down on our end of the southern end of the county. I do not know if they're going to GIS them yet. But they are an interesting term of witness tree, and it's not historic tree or something. I generally use the example of that beautiful tree in McMinnville. If you've ever driven from McMinnville to Sparta, there's this amazing tree on the side of the road across from their hospital. Yes, it's called the birthing tree, and it's on the Trail of Tears. So it's historic in Native American heritage. It's historic in that it's a landmark for early travelers on that road. That's an early road for people who came to settle in Bedford County. So that's the kind of witness tree, is that beautiful tree that I think is on their county logo, Warren County logo. So it's that kind of tree. And yes, we do have some, and I think our neighbors have a couple. But it always pays to know your geography as well, because that man's question was, can you tell me what you have on the Highland Rim Escarpment, which is where we go up to the Highland Rim. It's our beautiful rolling hills. And I was like, well, let's narrow that down a little bit. That escarpment goes all the way from up Crossville all the way into Alabama. So anyways, I said, let's narrow it down to Bedford County, what we can find. Another tree question that's coming up and is involved with tourism is we've had a gentleman from Massachusetts who is studying a specific kind of grafted tree that's pre-TVA that was being encouraged by our farmers to use for food and food supplements. And what it is they grafted their shagbark hickories with pecan trees. And so he has noted that we have a series of those trees. Well, as it turns out, we have a huge field or two of more than 100 of these grafted trees over around Bedford Lake. And they're still existing, they're still producing pecans, and they're still 100 years later. And it was a developmental process, and this gentleman thought it was unique to the New Deal history of improved foodways and resources of protein and food. And I said, oh no. I said, you got to consider that this is kind of thing that has happened in our territory for numerous generations from Native Americans, and each generation that had a difficult time of depressed food or eras, they turned to the trees in our area, the chestnuts that no longer exist, the American chestnuts, and other things, the hickory nuts and the foods that supplemented the diet when it, for example, during post-Civil War. And that's the kind, and he goes, oh, really? So he's expanding his research.
All right,
So I'll
perfect.
hush now.
Thank you for that. All right. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to our owner rep, and I know you got a mic back there as well.
So you have my report. I don't have anything to add to it other than we've been pouring concrete at 4:30 in the morning out at Liberty trying to beat the heat. So I appreciate OLG putting in some extra hours. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, here, none, seen none. Thank you for that. Up next is our monthly reports.
You've got a monthly report, and there's not a lot to report, nothing unusual so far, because we're just 1 month into the year. And that's your monthly financial report. And then I've got the analysis of property tax collections. The only thing we've collected is the prior year collections. The rest of them haven't started coming in yet, so there's no property tax collections. We do have some sales tax, but that's considered a part of the June of last year. It's a receivable, so that's zero there. But if you'll look at June every year, it's actually doubled up because we pick up the receivable. And so we're really operating on cash flow until we start collecting property taxes. That's my report.
Okay. Questions? They don't go to the commission, does it? No. All right. And other reports, I know EMS is in the house. I think Ted's on assignment. Did I skip anything for you? Okay. So do y'all have any questions? And Johnny Pop is here, assistant, if you have.
Have any questions? be more than glad to answer them. Some of the exciting things that we have going on is we've got 6 paramedic applicants and 12 advanced EMT applicants. Out of the application pool that we got after screening, we found that 8 of the applicants didn't have any type of licensing at all after applying for the job. So starting September 4th, 5th, and 6th, we'll start interviews. And hopefully on the 9th, we'll let all candidates know who are eligible to be hired to start coming in for pre-hire interviews. Horse show's going well. Staffing has been great for that. We haven't had any major incidents. Starting right after the horse show, we have an ambulance headed to Select Tech to be remounted. So putting one of 2 ambulances on in the field this year, and we'll order a new one come sometime in October through Savage Group. That way, keeping it out of the bid process for us. Other than that, that's about all we have. And our EMT program is going well. We've got 13 candidates in the EMT school, and they should graduate sometime in December.
Fantastic. And we're blessed to have that training available to do in-house. It's really made a difference in his full-time staff. And I think I was out there a few weeks ago and we were looking at the wall with the employee. Yeah, I need some training.
No, I thought you were doing.
No, I wasn't doing the training. I'm old school, but I think about 6 of the current ones are straight out of your feeder system, maybe even greater number than that, but that was actually on the wall. So
About 40% of the last hiring for the last 3 years been from our EMT and
which is
Grow young.
certainly helped us a lot. Thank you for that. Motion to approve reports.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, then we got Board of Education surplus, and that's to move on to the commission. As we
Motion to
just
move.
heard earlier, you don't have to.
Motion
Just
to move
moves
on.
All right, we got that. And how about other business? What did I miss? All right, anything, all right, what about announcements? Horse show's going on, anything you want to say?
Come out to the horse show. Things are going well. The crowds have been great. We might wait till the sun goes down.
Now, what about
A little warm
weather?
out there.
Are we expecting weather?
We're expecting weather.
There we go.
Yes. Might rain a little later this week, but things are going well.
Any other announcements? All right, we ready to adjourn?
We'll adjourn.